Hi, I'm Alice,
And I'm Greg.
and today we want to answer some of your questions and address some of your comments as well.
We're back in Mexico City after our trip to Europe. We actually just went to one country. I make it sound very exciting. We went to Porto.
It was very exciting.
It was very exciting. We did ask for some comments or questions from our viewers, and several of you sent in some questions, so we'd like to address them. Before we get started, we'd like to address an older post on one of our videos where we visited a very ornate Catholic church in Mexico.
Alice and I find it ironic that while the indigenous people of Mexico were subjugated and impoverished, the church went to great lengths to show off their material wealth in such an ostentatious way.
And the viewer left a comment, and their comment was, our anti-Catholic bias, meaning us, your anti-Catholic bias is hateful. The church was built for the benefit of the rich and the poor, and the over-the-top ornamentation was meant to give glory to God. Okay, so a little bit to unpack there because both of us were raised Catholic, I believe.
Yes.
I was raised Catholic. So when I enter these churches, I can appreciate them for the beautiful pieces of art that they are, and I respect the attempt to create a spiritual environment for people. And it does resonate with me because I was raised Catholic, as I said, but I cannot divorce that from what I know to be historical facts about how the indigenous people were treated here in the New World, how they were pressed into slavery, how they were basically eradicated, and these churches were built as monuments to the glory of the king and the wealth that they amassed from the riches they plundered from the New World. I mean, there's no nicer way to say it.
I think I agree with you, Greg, but I also think that if you think about how the gold got there and who had to go out and mine for that gold and what were the expectations of these, I do think slavery is the correct word, even though some of these indigenous people were actually working on encomiendas, which was just like, splitting hairs on how close it was to slavery.
Plantation, encomienda.
Yeah, it's very, very similar conditions. And there were conditions where like people were dying. Andres Resendez has a book called The Other Slavery, which talks a lot about how the indigenous people were treated in the New World, and I highly recommend it. But we cannot ignore what we see, and what we see is more than what's on the walls. Also, I think we do want to apologize if we've insulted anybody or if you think that we are judging you for your religious beliefs, because that is not the case. We are questioning history, we are questioning monuments and churches, and we don't intend for you to necessarily agree with us. We're simply raising questions that we're asking of ourselves. And sometimes perhaps we treat it with a sense of humor because we're goofy that way. But it's never meant as an insult. And hopefully, if you did feel insulted, we definitely apologize.
I think when we travel, we look at travel as a way to interrogate our beliefs and our education.
I also think being able to talk to you about it also helps us clarify our thoughts. And if you have any questions or comments, we really appreciate it, because I feel like this is a conversation that can only get more interesting and we can shed more light on it together. So please feel free to give us your opinions.
Thank you. Okay, let's get to the real questions now. Which did you like better, Alice, Porto or Lisbon?
Well, I have to say I liked both for different reasons. Lisbon was beautiful. I wouldn't want to miss walking through the Jerónimos Monastery for anything. So I would not skip Lisbon, but I definitely felt more at home in Porto. I felt like there was a lot to see, there's a lot to do. It's a very walkable city. In my opinion, it's much more walkable than Lisbon. Lisbon feels a lot hillier for some reason. I don't know if it truly is, because there are hills in Porto as well. But for me, I just felt like it was a little more chill in Porto.
I think if you're a tourist and you're visiting Portugal and you have one city to choose from, Porto or Lisbon, choose Lisbon. For me, Lisbon has more historical monuments. It's a tourist destination for an obvious reason because there's a lot to see there and it's fairly compact. Porto is the place that I would choose to live if I was given a choice to live in Portugal, which would be really nice. And again, for the same reason, I feel like it's a more livable city than Lisbon. Lisbon can be a little much for someone my age.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that happened is that we got really excited when we realized that we were really going to go to Portugal. So we started watching videos and doing a little bit of research, and it became obvious to us that Portugal might be a really cool place to retire. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that was in the back of our heads as we were like going to, visiting these different places in Porto and Lisbon was how livable is the city. And I think for me, Porto was definitely
it's more
the winner.
More low key. Okay, so have you had any issues traveling? Have you had any issues traveling during the pandemic?
Well, I think for us, one of the things that happened was we didn't fly directly to Portugal. We had a stopover in Madrid. So when we got to the counter in Mexico City and tried to check in, they said, you have this form that you have to fill out before you can enter Spain. And I'm like, but it's just a plane change. And they're like, nope. You gotta go online, you gotta fill all this out.
Even though you're just gonna be parked in the airport for an hour and a half, you have to fill out the form, so.
So that was a little bit, that was a surprise, a kind of unpleasant surprise if you're trying to fill out a form on your phone at the last minute. But it has to be done, and that, it's just a glitch.
I think it's something that we've learned is that every country, or a lot of countries, have different requirements. And it pays to know those requirements ahead of time, prepare and fill out any forms that you can ahead of time. It'll save you a little stress at the airport, which I think it was a little stressful for us because we really didn't know what was expected. But what they needed to see to enter Spain was proof of vaccination, as well as the most recent booster shot. So it wasn't just like, take your word for it. You had to actually download the form that you received from whoever gave you your booster shot, which we had to do.
Yeah, and then you get a QR code that allows you into the country. And from what we've heard, if you're in Spain, you also might need that to enter certain establishments, like restaurants and bars.
Establishment sounds so dirty in my mind, but you can't. Yeah, if you're going in a place like a nightclub where there's a lot of people, you might be required to show that. So in essence, it is a vaccine passport, which I know we talked about as kind of a red flag for a lot of Americans. If you want to travel, you have to live with it. Next question. Oh, this is a good question. Why didn't you take a bus instead of trying to fly from Porto to Lisbon? And I was like,
my answer is because I actually booked the flight when I was here in Mexico City, when we realized, we are going to extend our trip a little bit and visit Lisbon. It's very inexpensive to fly. So I did it in advance. I didn't realize that it was very easy to take the bus and that it was less expensive. And it probably would have been
a hell of a lot easier because the thing about flights is we had a flight cancel and then we had a flight delay. So learn from our mistake, learn from our pain is that,
research your options first. We were too excited.
Yeah.
And just like, yes, let's go.
Flights within countries in Europe can be very inexpensive. And it seems like you'll get there in an hour and save a bunch of time. But the thing about flights is they can be canceled, they can be delayed. So
and also you have to go through security. You have to get there a lot earlier. So
buses and trains. How do you choose the places you visit? Let's start with that. How do you choose the places you visit?
Okay, so mostly when we're traveling within Mexico, we decide like how much time we have, how far we want to go, and it's fairly easy. I like to take little bus rides. The buses here in Mexico City are very comfortable. They're fairly inexpensive, and they get you there fast. So like bus travel here is deluxe.
It is. Buses,
Yeah.
so we've done a few videos on bus travel within Mexico, and the buses here are really great.
Yeah, it's like first class on an airplane. But
Without the food.
yeah, that's
Okay.
true. Well, at least during COVID without the food, but I think at other times they might serve food.
So are you planning any more trips?
Yes, and our European trip only came up because I was invited to speak at a conference, and then Greg was also invited to show his photographs. So we were able to get out there and have most of our trip covered. So I want to take this moment to say thank you to the Keysmith Conference, thank you to Paula Guerra, thank you to Sofia Sosa, and also thank you to Victor Torpedo for inviting me to play with him. That doesn't sound right.
What? Oh my God. Victor Torpedo and the Pop Kids, thank you so much. They are a very accomplished band. They're a very tight band, but they did have to learn several new songs for Alice to perform with them, and they did a great job.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really fun. The trip was really fun. It was really well organized, and kudos to you because it was quite a feat to pull off. It's a marvelous conference. And
She's like a vampire. She can only go where she's invited.
or a witch, right?
I
So
guess,
witches
yeah.
and vampires, like you have to invite them in
I think so. I think witches too. But you can put like a little bit of salt on your doorway. So.
if you don't want me.
Just a little
But
tip.
yes, luckily, like we did this conference in Portugal, and then we piggybacked it into another invitation. We got an invitation to go to Basque country, and that
How
is
exciting.
super exciting for me because in researching my ancestry, I found out that I'm Basque. So it's really cool. I want to dig in and find out more. So Basque country and Madrid and probably Barcelona are in the cards in the near future.
I get to tag along as a spare baggage.
He's gonna.
Oh,
no.
what?
It's a birthday.
I'm a baggage
birthday
fee.
present.
All right, last question I think here is, do you prefer Airbnbs to hotels for short-term travel?
Well, I think for short-term travel, they're pretty close. I enjoy an Airbnb because I like having access to a kitchen. I do prefer to, at least breakfast, like I wake up and I want to eat pretty soon after, like without having to get dressed and everything. So I enjoy like the morning coffee and even if it's toast, something to eat to get me going. So I like that about Airbnbs. However, I don't like the unpredictability of Airbnbs. Sometimes, like it might be in an area you don't like, it might be misrepresented. Although that has happened less and less lately. But I feel like I still sometimes enjoy a hotel room. Sometimes they will pick you up at the airport or drop you off at the airport. You have a concierge, you have I don't know, there's just nice things about hotels. I'm not someone who enjoys going to the pool, but some people do.
Allison.
But there's things about hotels. Depends on what you appreciate, what you like to do. So I don't rule out hotels when I'm booking a vacation for us. Usually I look both places, compare the prices, compare the perks of each, and I read all the reviews, or not if there's 300, but I read most of the recent reviews, and try and figure it out from there. So I think both are options.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just comes down to what works for you, what works for your budget, and what works for your particular trip. For example, there was one day when we flew back to Porto, and we only were in Porto for overnight, and so we booked a hotel that was near the airport because we knew we were just going to drop our clothes, go out to eat, and then get up very early the next morning to catch
And
the
it was
flight.
a really nice hotel,
Yeah,
and it was very inexpensive. We should put
It
the
was-
name below in case you ever just need an overnight at a hotel. It was not close to the center of the city, but we got to walk around. We went to a really nice restaurant, like
Local-
homey,
a local
like a local
restaurant.
restaurant. But that's what I mean by nice. It was like
The food
was great.
Sorry,
It was
the food was very
inexpensive,
good.
and it was inexpensive, and you were around locals, and you know,
And it
really
was
tested
nice.
our Portuguese skills.
And it was located near a creepy cornfield, which I appreciated.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. And the hotel room itself was like, I loved the bathroom was like really stylish. It was just a nice place to stay. So
Yeah.
both are options. I think also keep in mind, and we'll talk a little bit more maybe in our next video about like, if you are staying at an Airbnb, keep in mind where you're staying and whether you are, what you're doing to the dynamics of that community. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Airbnbs can be great, but they do have a local impact. So
Yeah,
that's it.
good. Yeah. Thank you again for watching. If you have any questions or comments for us, as always, leave them down below and we will address them in a future video. If you enjoy the content of our videos, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It very much helps with the YouTube algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified when we upload new videos, which is every Thursday.
We'll see you next week.